Welcome to Evilive, the live media streaming commentary show. I don't know why I keep doing that, live media streaming. The live media commentary show that answers the question, how much equals the Devil's Due? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing The Command to Look by William Mortensen and George Dunham. Of course, this is a reprint of the original Command to Look. This was reprinted by Feral House on October 21st, 2014, so it's been out there for a little while, but again, the original, I think, was like in the 30s or something. William Mortensen, of course, is an old school photographer from the 20s and 30s, and he has some of the most moving and powerful photos, arguably, that I have ever seen. I mean, I'm not talking paintings, just strictly photography, and then arguably photography that's staged and designed. And I think that's really what comes down to this collection for me, to this book, which not only features his thesis on how to create better photographs, which is the command to look, but also the fact that he references design in order to create these photos. And if you're just someone who's not really artistically bent, you have no idea what he's talking about when it comes to layout, composition, and design. As a designer myself, I really, really appreciate all of the minutia that goes into consideration, preparation, and execution of these photographs. Because unlike traditional fine art, though you can use these techniques to succeed at creating any fine art piece, these are really meant to force you to feel something, to experience something, to share something. And that's what I genuinely love about this. All right, so this has a concluding essay by Michael Moynihan, who is, I guess, arguably an occult writer, but, you know, very satanic, with Satanism as a background. And that's why this was reprinted. Let's not pretend anything other than this. This was reprinted because Anton LaVey was obsessed with the original and with William Mortensen. So much so that, as with many other artists, filmmakers, designers, occultists, free thinkers, and philosophers, he used William Mortensen's ideas in order to form Satanism as an actual religion. That is important to note, because without key people like William Mortensen and his ideas, I think Satanism as a religion would be infinitely less than. He gives it just a boost by the very nature of the concepts contained herein. And so what are these concepts? Well, some of this, again, is just his understanding of how to create an impactful photo, which is funny that that simple concept of that simple desire of just creating a photo that I can sell to magazines would then inspire much of a religious movement and the magical systems in that religious movement. Now, arguably, Anton LaVey would have come up to these ideas eventually on his own, maybe, but he didn't have to because William Mortensen had already done it and he loved it. So, what are these ideas? The formula is as follows. And this is the sort of the overarching view of this formula. I'm not going to break down all of the minutia of each and every one, but there's three distinct steps. The picture must be very, by its very arrangement, make you look at it. And you would think that, well, of course it's a photo, why wouldn't you look at it? But what does it mean to look at it? Well, it means that you're actually paying attention to what you're seeing. How many advertisements do you see go by either on a streaming service or on billboards or in magazine ads? Do you, arguably, your eyes hit, but you don't really see them? Well, you don't really look at them. That's what he's talking about. The arrangement of the photo itself forces you as a viewer to look at it. And then the second part, once you've looked at it, see it. So what does that mean? It means understand its impact to your eye. Now, again, this may not be anything greater than, wow, that's very disturbing, or wow, that's very pretty. But the fact that you are absorbing visually what is happening and reacting to it emotionally, that is what he means by see. And then the third part, having seen, enjoy. And that is a bit of a reflective process. And all of this is happening instantaneous. You're not really even thinking about it unless you've been educated in these processes. You go to design school, you learn this stuff. It's very basic. You go to photography school, they're doing the exact same thing. But once you've actually seen the image, well, you have to respect what it has done to you, how it has made you feel, etc. Hey, Aaron, thanks for joining live. It's good to see you. Everything is going really well. So I really, really appreciated this book for that aspect of it, that it reinforced some design fundamentals that I hadn't thought about since college, which was a very long time ago, going on 20 years. And then also its relationship to Satanism as a fundamental religion through Anton LaVey, because some of the core concepts of Satanism, which I had always assumed were created by LaVey, were in fact taken by him from other people like William Mortensen. And one of the most important ones to a Satanist, of course, is aesthetics, and it's sex, sentiment, and wonder. And these are three, I don't know if you'd call them techniques, but three avenues that an individual will adopt, and maybe a combination of, in order to personify themselves and really exact lesser magic in their life, right? This is core to what it means to be a Satanist, having personal aesthetics, and then using those personal aesthetics in order to manipulate the greater world at large. Now, this is applied psychology. In Satanism, we reference it as lesser magic. So ultimately, the idea of one adopting sex, sentiment, or wonder in part or in combinations of some sort in order to become the best version of themselves in order to manipulate life, that is center to everything that is Satanism. And it's not even something that the man who codified it came up with. That was really interesting to me. I honestly thought he did. And especially when he's referencing the look. The look is incredibly important. That came from Mortensen, not LaVey. And so ultimately, I really love it. And of course, as a designer, as someone who's a creative artist who communicates design professionally, when it comes to things that, concepts that LaVey brought about, like the law of the trapezoid, these ideas are very, very important. And that's that certain forms, certain geometric shapes are going to affect you emotionally. And this, again, is a concept that arguably it was taken from design school. This is Design 101. But specifically, it was taken from William Mortensen in his first section of the picture must, by its very arrangement, make you look at it. And that is that pictures will have specific geometric builds, whether it's a large mass, in the center, dominant mass, or whether it's some sort of angular reference or the S-curve that LaVey mentions ad nauseum in The Satanic Witch with women, and the law of the trapezoid as a conceptual essay that he put out. I believe it was in, he could have mentioned it in the Satanic Bible, but I believe there was an essay about it in The Devil's Notebook. I could be wrong. It's been a little bit since I've read that one. So, but the concept itself is solid, and it is something that anyone can adopt, appreciate, and more importantly, employ. And so all of these different reasons are why I think this is a fantastic book. And it's not a big one. It comes in around, I think it's like 240 pages or something like that. So it's not a very big read. And the book itself is infinitely smaller than your traditional paperback. So it's a bit of a faster read as well. And the middle section of the book is really just a series of photographs of William Mortensen on one side, and the other side is him explaining how he applied his own technique of the command to look to that photograph, which is why it is arguably successful. So I think that's always great. So you've always loved the lesser magic aspect of the book. Glad you're reviewing it. Yeah, me too. And the thing is I bought this a long time ago, but I have so many books on my shelves that I haven't read yet. I'm just now getting around to it. And I dig it. My son got me American Grotesque, I think it is, or Grotesquerie or something, which is a collection of an art book of William Mortensen's that he released that I'm going to be reviewing next as well. So look forward to that because he's amazing. I'll try to get some of the images so I can share some of the images throughout the course of this as well. The downside of this book is that it's very short. It's very tight and concise. William Mortensen did not have to take as much time as he did in order to explain the concepts that he was portraying. He reiterates himself, he repeats himself over and over again in each section. And if it wasn't for Satanists picking this original book up and adding to it with their own thoughts and essay and preface and stuff, this would be a much shorter book. Much shorter. It would be less than 200 pages at best. So I was a little bit disappointed by that because ultimately this book came about because William Mortensen was hired by his publisher at the time, this is back in the 30s, I believe, to create, how to produce better photos. And instead, when he was going through the process of writing this photography book, he realized that this core of everything that he was trying to convey came down to the command to look that he developed through personal experience. And so he really wanted to tell that story. And so he tried to go back to the publisher and say, hey, look, I want to actually, instead of writing the book that you wanted me to write this book instead. And they dropped him totally. They're like, no, that's not what we paid you for. F off. And so he went to a different publisher and they published it for him. So I can only imagine how small the original one of this book was. But arguably, if you've never read the Satanic Bible, if you never read the Devil's Notebook, then maybe, or if you have never gone to design school, maybe you don't know what these concepts are. And this is an invaluable read for those of you who this would be new to. For those of us who have already sort of experienced all of these notions and stuff, it's just fun to see where some of these concepts originated from. And that's really the strength of this book to anyone who already knows. The images that you're going to get in here are black and white prints, and so they're not, and to that point, they're not very crisp either. The type is infinitely more crisp than the photos are, and arguably the photos of the copies of the photographs themselves add to that in the fact that it's in black and white instead of maybe its original color if it had color originally. They're just not that great as reproductions, and so you don't really get the full impact of the photo itself, which is another, thing that kind of bothered me about this. So ultimately, I did not give this a perfect score, which one may think that I would based on my background and my passion here. I gave it 4 out of 5 evil eyes, and that's as good as it's going to get because it's too short. He conveyed the idea too simplistically. And of course, you have to do that for people, but I want more. I want you to get deeper into the process. I want you to give more examples and give more detail about why these examples are really personifications of your concept of the commando look. And I didn't get it. That didn't really drop it down much. One evil eye, and what's losing an eye? It happens sometimes. But ultimately, I wanted a little bit more out of the book, but I was very happy with what I got out of the book. And the real strength of this for those who are sort of walking the left-hand path is really Moynihan's essay at the very end, because the essay that he presents is how Anton LaVey used this command to look to formulate lesser magic. And that's where it's really, really interesting for those who are into the occult or into the idea, the concept of applied psychology or magic or Satanism in any way. That was the really great part of this entire collection. Hearing Mortensen's original concepts were great. Hearing how they influenced LaVey was great. But seeing what LaVey did with them, how he applied them not just in visual arts, but also in physical, real world action. That's what's really fantastic about this. And so getting that huge leap from just something on a page to something in real life is it's very difficult for some people to actually get over. The concepts in Satanism, it's very challenging for some people to actually enact in their lives. But that's what it's really all about. And so to see that happen with LaVey and his appreciation for Mortensen was just, it was badass. So I highly recommend you check out this book if you have not already. If you appreciate art, if you consider yourself an artist or a designer, or if you just want to really understand how one individual took the concepts that this photographer expressed and extrapolated them out to an entire religious movement that is still reverberating more than 50 years later. That's something you can't shake a stick at. I don't even know what that means. Shake a stick at. But anyway, so your daughter's taking a photography course in high school this year. That's awesome. And you're letting her borrow this book. I think that's fantastic. You should definitely do that. And then, of course, hopefully she learns something from it and so that she can then use it. And really, you know, we live in a completely different world than Mortensen did in the 20s and 30s. So, you know, a publication does not typically go to an artist and you know has an artist send a whole bunch of photos to them just out of the blue and then choose one of those to use for a cover or something like that. Nowadays, it's much more purpose driven. We rely less on creative photography, which Mortensen stuff really is, and more on commercial photography. So it's going to be a picture of a fucking burger, or it's going to be a specific industrial complex to sort of pay off the headline of the actual story that's being told. So yes, it's less creative inspired. Yes, it's more literal and commercial, but that's the world we live in now as opposed to the world he lived in then. And so I don't know how far beyond the concept of fine art you could really extrapolate his concepts, because even the stuff when it comes to you know, his concepts behind the picture must at his very arrangement make you look at it, and how he describes in doing that, they have less meaning now, and people just don't seem to care. Everything's about stock photography and getting the most simple, basic idea across to the masses because, let's be honest, most people don't care to read and don't care to consider what they're actually looking at. That affects how people make things. And so ultimately, we're in a worse place for it, in my particular perspective. But it's nice to go back to a time, do a little time travel through the reading of this, seeing how it was at one time, how advertising or editorials could have been and were and are no longer. So weep for the future, because it's only going to get worse, people. It's only going to get worse. I know it. All right. Well, that's all I have for this. Thank you so much for tuning in live. I appreciate you, honey. For those of you who are checking this after the fact, did you find this book interesting? Have you read it? If not, what about these concepts inspire you? You know, maybe it'll give you a chance to try creating your own piece of art or photography or something, or maybe applying it to your own real life and seeing where you can go with it. Give it a go. You won't regret it. Thank you all so much for tuning in again. And as always, remember that evil spelled backwards is live. So get your asses out there and be evil.